You can see that. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Isaac. Good one. And then it should tell us when we're into it. Welcome along, Steph. So we'll crack in. So first of all, Harrow, thanks so much for your time and coming in and helping my guys out. We're currently in week 2 of a bit of a 4-week series here, learning how to better coach ourselves. Last week we tackled exercise. This week we're tackling mindset. Next week we're looking at sleep, and last week we're looking at nutrition. And the end game to this, the reason that we're doing it is so that we can all learn to better coach ourselves. And I said to the guys earlier today, I recommend you get a pen and a notepad so you can write down one thing, at least one thing that you can try. Ideally daily, something practical that you can do to work on your mindset, because we want to keep things as tangible as possible. But for those of you who haven't had a chance to do a bit of recon on Harrow, buckle in. I'm just going to do a real quick rundown of his achievements and background and coaching career. So hopefully all of these dates are right, Harrow. In terms of coaching in AFL at a higher level, assistant coach at the New South Wales ACT Rams from 2000 2001. You're at West Perth from 2002 2005. You're at West Coast Eagles 2006 2008. Carlton 2009 to 2012, and then Northern Bull Ants and Blues in 2011 and 2012. And in terms of career highlights, you had a pretty exciting time at more of a local level at Wodonga as you came through the ranks. But in terms of state league, there was West Perth Premiership captain in 1995. You won the Simpson medal that year, Breckler medal that year. You were the Premiership coach in 2003 when you took over there. State league representative captain. And when West Coast Eagles won their Premiership, this is a coaching one too. In 2006, you were there helping. That was the forwards, hey? You were looking after the forwards that year?
Yeah, had the forward.
Yeah, cool. So that's a bit of a hit list. I know there's some like footy nuffies in the room who would have looked into where you come from and what you've done. Are pretty excited to be here. But I want to just quickly ask you about talking about mindset. And you mentioned earlier when we were doing that prep how part of what contributes to mindset is your like your upbringing and your background and how that forms your views. And I wanted to ask you a bit about Wodonga. We've got a few country people in the room and a few old souls and people who like getting out to the wide open spaces. Can you tell us a bit about your upbringing and what Wodonga's like as a place to grow up?
Yeah, I was really lucky to grow up in Wodonga. When we got there, it was about 15,000 people. But when you went to school, a lot of the kids that came into the town to school were on farms and lived out in the country on dairy farms or had cattle or sheep. So it was just a great place to grow up. So I lived in a street where everyone just used to come out and play in the street, heaps of kids around. It was a pretty tough sort of environment. We pretty competitive, and we went pretty hard on the road out the front and in the parks. But from sort of age 8 or 9, you could get on a bike and ride out to the creeks and jump off the bridges and swim down the rivers. And my dad bought a boat, and we used to water ski a lot of nights out at the Hume Weir. And so I played every sport that was available that I could get to on a bike that my dad was willing to pay membership for. And it was just a great way to live. And everyone sort of got to know each other in the town. My dad was a school teacher, so he taught a lot of kids that had a lot of respect for him. So I got looked after a lot around the place, which was nice because I wasn't an overly big kid. It was just a fantastic way to grow up. And I had a lot of good people that coached me and taught me in the town. And I reckon because of the relationship they had with my dad and respect they had for my dad in the place, they also took an interest in me and looked after me. So I felt really supported as a kid, but I was able to just have this freedom that I don't reckon happens today. The same, and I reckon that freedom gave us a lot of confidence to really have a crack at things as a kid. So yeah, just really, really lucky to be a Wodonga boy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Guys, just in the chat box, can you chuck a smiley face if you had a bit of a childhood with at least one thing? like that in there. If you're a bit of a free range chicken or you got to go out into the wide open spaces, yeah, it won't be everyone, but I'm just interested to see who that kind of landed with a bit. Certainly, I've got to put a smiley face in, lands with me. I grew up in Cookham, and there's a few Cookham kids in here. 200 people live out there, and 30 kids in the school. And yeah, it's certainly unusual these days, but it's fun. Cool, thanks, guys. So we're gonna we're gonna jump into a bit of a definition and crack right into it now. So we're talking about mindset today. End game's to better coach yourself. I want you to walk away with like at least one action, daily habit, takeaway that you can try. And I'm going to challenge you a little bit with that one and get a few of you to share at the end. But because mindset's such a big topic, I'm actually going to put in the chat box a definition, like a bit of a starting off point for us, because with it being such a big topic, it's important that we all start on the same page. So in the chat box, hopefully you can see there, I'll read it out in case you're on a phone. A bit of a definition for mindset. We're going to stay pretty broad, give ourselves some wiggle room with our definition. It's a particular way of thinking or a frame of mind, either towards life in general or towards a specific area of life. And we're pretty interested in our health today. And then to unpack that a little bit, a few things about mindset that I'll chuck in now. So first up, can you see that in the chat box there, okay? Guys, give me a thumbs up if that's coming in. Great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dad. So a few things about mindset. It's affected by your experience. Harry just shared a bit of his education and or your culture, your general upbringing, experience, exposure to the world. Next one tends to be fixed, hence the set part of mindset, but it can change. Third thing to know is it can form quickly, but it can be resistant to change. Next one is helps determine your actions and behaviours, then affects how you perceive the world around you as well as yourself. And then lastly, it affects your personal growth and performance. So thumbs up if that's a clear enough starting point for us all to jump off with. Does that make sense to everybody in there? Thanks, Sammy. All good, Daz? Yeah, sweet. All right. So we're going to kind of come back to that a little bit as we go through. And I'm going to jump into some questions now for Harrow. So just to give you some background, almost all of you in the room sent through either your reason for being in this podcast tonight or a specific question that you had, or both. And so what I've done is taken those, kind of pulled out the commonalities into 4 key themes, and then thought a bit about Harrow's experience, and then kind of built the questions themselves into the questions I have for Harrow. So I'm just going to get him to share a bit about his experience around how your questions relate to mindset. We've got 5 questions to work through. After each one, I'll open the floor for you to ask any extra further questions to challenge a bit if you want. Might ask a couple of you who the question relates to comment to see if that's helped, and we'll kind of work through them from top to bottom. Hope that sounds okay. So first one we got, Harrow. You ready?
Yeah, mate.
So based on your career teaching, you didn't say this before, but you're a PE teacher out of the gates, weren't you?
Yep.
You're teaching, you're coaching footy, you're growing leaders in sport and business. That's helping others, and in your own life. What are the simplest ways to identify an unhelpful mindset, either in yourself or in someone else? Ask that bit first, then I'll have a bit of a follow-up after this.
Yeah, I guess when you ask me about negative mindset, it's interesting. I think the thing that I think about as a coach and myself is I reckon the knowledge, or how well I know myself, I'm able to know when I'm in that frame of mind or those things are going on, and being able to coach someone else and understand someone else and whether they are in a negative mindset, I need to know them. So I reckon there's a couple of key things there for me is the work you've done on yourself, your own experiences, the way you've been able to learn and take those things on and adapt over a long period of time you're probably looking at the things that have put you into that state of mind or placed you in that position. And so I guess the best way for me to explain that from a negative mindset point of view, I was probably early 90s. I'd finished university, become a school teacher, and couldn't get a job, so I had to go back and live at home. There was not a lot of employment in Victoria at the time. So I was working night shift, playing footy, but I got back and I drank too much, dabbled in a few other things, and just got myself into a place that wasn't a great place to be in. I reckon it was on the back of not being really happy with what I was doing and my behaviour. Like it didn't sit well with who I wanted to be and where I saw myself. And so getting out of that took a fair bit of time and effort. But it was linked to what I was doing. So, and that also was self-fulfilling in a way, because I'd do something that I wasn't proud of. I'd tell myself I wasn't great, and then the people around me, the way they treated me was a bit different. So it was this whole cycle of not great things happening all the time. And in amongst that, I still won a best and fairest for footy. I still, there was still a lot of good stuff happening, but I just wasn't comfortable completely with who I was. And so when you come out of that, you're able to reflect on it and look back on it and realise the reasons it was happening. So I guess what I'm saying is there's a knowledge, you feel it, but it's behaviour driven as well. And I think one of the things too that come out of that as you go through this bit of a journey is confidence, I guess, in the change in your mindset that can happen is your memory of past success. So if you've got those memories of what it felt like and when you're at your best and when things were going well, what were the things you were doing? So trying to shift back into, getting back to those things that worked for you. And with others, I reckon the better you get to know people and you have a real good awareness of them, and you ask them the question all the time, how are you? And it's not always the first question you ask. It might be the third, the fourth, or the fifth. But if that person's built some trust in you, they'll share it. But I reckon you can pick it up in body language. You can pick it up on someone who all of a sudden is turning up just in time or is late. There's a number of little things that you'll see a shift in. They mightn't speak as much in meetings. There's a whole range of things, and that's when, if you've put the time and effort in, you'll be able to pick those up, and you've got to look at it from all different angles. There might be something that's going on, and once you have a bit of that knowledge, I think you're able to help. And sometimes helping might be just sitting there and listening. You don't have to have all the answers, but just being with someone or helping someone, or someone feels like you can't care. That's probably the first part in trying to shift some of that negative mindset. Someone knows you're in with them. I'm probably jumping around a little bit, but it's around knowledge of yourself and others, and it's linked to behaviour. It's about what you do and what you see. For me, they're probably the key things.
Yeah, that's there's a lot in there. That's a great starting point for us. So, with regards to early 90s, you're feeling like your mindset isn't the best it can be, and it's linked to your behaviours. Do you find that changing the way you think is the first step, or changing the behaviours, like the daily things that you do, is the first step to kind of get you out of a bit of a rut like you found yourself in?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think you'll find with a lot of your questions and a lot of the things that we talk about and everything there's overlaps and there's bits of everything in amongst it, because I think what I did was took myself out of the environment, realised that, I had to get away, and it was a real turning point in my life, coming to WA to play footy and got a teaching job and got some real purpose in my life. So there's that part. which, did I tell myself, right, I've got to go? I knew myself well enough that I have to get out of here. This isn't a great place to be. It hadn't been a long period of time, but it just wasn't setting me up for success, I didn't think. I had to remove myself from it. Or was it the behaviour of going away and doing that? So they're probably linked. I reckon. I reckon it was probably the realisation that I needed, and people around me helped me as well to realise that I needed it. So I removed myself from it, which meant I could be someone else in a different place.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, that's kind of starting to really cover the follow-up question to this, which is when you find yourself in a low, an unhelpful, or a negative mindset, what are the most effective ways of changing it, either in yourself or in others? And you've touched on, you changed your environment as a bit of a catalyst, and your kind of daily actions have obviously shifted too. Is there anything you'd add to that? Knowing yourself is another thing you mentioned.
I reckon at the time I committed to a few things that were really important. And they probably didn't come to fruition till later. They were more organic at the time, but then going through that, I've got more awareness of it as you grow a bit older. And when I found myself in leadership roles, I was able to draw on some of that adversity and what happened within it. And I think it's always served me pretty well. But that removing myself from that environment and then trying to play at a much higher level of footy and prove myself there was behaviour that needed to happen for that to be effective. And early days, while I was in this transition, I didn't get some of that right. But then it clicked in that, geez, I had to be fitter and I had to start doing a few things that would enable me to play at an elite level of footy in the waffle. And once I started to get some success with that on the back of training harder and a bit of belief, it sort of kept growing. So there was things that I did that were important at the time. Like I just had a routine that on my off nights of training, for example, I had this 5.1 kilometre track, and I'd try and beat my time every time. And every time I was running that, all I was really thinking about was the bloke that I'd be playing on that week, and that there was no chance he was going to be able to stay with me. So there was a change in self-talk, but it also became a bit of a ritual to me. And a few of those rituals and behaviours got added as I matured, and I came up with a really good routine that helped me. So yeah, these will probably dive into some of the other questions you've had, mate. But I think one of the things my wife said to me, and I had on my toilet door at the time, was "Your word as law." So I tended to jump around a little bit. I was always wanting to do the next thing, and I couldn't sit still, and I was always on the move. But it was your word as law for me was committing to something. So the example I'll use is, you've said, you said to yourself, I'm going to get up every morning at 6 o'clock and I'm going to run this 5Ks, and the bloke that, or the woman that 2 days in reaches over and turns the buzzer off and rolls over and goes back to sleep, gets to the end of the week and doesn't feel as good about themselves. Whereas the person who sees that through and gets to the end of the week and finishes the commitment, there's something that goes with that. Like there's a really great feeling that goes with that. So your word as law for me was, if I said I was going to do something and I did it, the power was with me and I felt better about myself. And I'll always be grateful that my wife Gail said that to me in that sort of period of time where I was transitioning to build my own confidence.
Yeah, I remember you sharing that with the coaches down at Claremont about how you encouraged early in your coaching career, encourage players to adopt that mindset and mentality. And it's simple and it's deep, and there's two parts to it. For me, I've been thinking about it. It's like actually think through what you commit to. Don't be kind of fickle and just be like, yeah, I'm going to do a 5K run every morning from now on, without actually thinking through what that's going to take, if it fits with your schedule, if you've got any injuries that have got in your way in the past. Like, get that bit right, measure twice, cut once, and then challenge yourself to have the integrity and treat it as a law in your life. It's pretty powerful way to look at your commitments. Thanks for sharing that. Guys, that's our first question, and it's linked to a lot of your questions that you sent through on the form there. Has anyone got any follow-ups for Harrow just on what we touched on there? So identifying negative mindsets first of all, and then changing them either in yourself or in others. I know that this links to one that you had, Sammy, you a bit as well, M. Gray. All good if we kind of covered it all. But just wanted to open the floor now if there's any follow-ups. And this is the fun part of podcasts where you just wait if anyone's in. I'll give it 10 seconds, guys. What do you reckon? Yeah, we go.
No, I'm just going to jump in so I don't leave you hanging. That pretty much answered it for me. I think that's a really cool rule to go by. Your word is law. So it's a big takeaway for me. Thanks, Sarah.
Pleasure.
That's my brother Sam. We play in the same team together down at the Roosters. He plays up forward. I play down back.
He's the good foreman.
Don't you bloody start that. There's a bit of a contest going on down at the Roosters, and I think he plays better when I play for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, cool. Well, let's call that one. Put a tick next to that one. Our next one is to do with mindset and performance. So from a performance perspective, you had a pretty special year in 1995. I'm just going to go through a few things that happened in that year that you were part of. So you were West Perth's premiership captain. You won the Simpson medal, the Brackler medal at waffle level, and just like at pretty peak performance in terms of being a player and a leader. So I'm curious to kind of get under that and for you to talk a little bit about your mindset. Did you do anything that year that bolstered your mindset that you felt contributed to your output or your performance? And then we got some athletes in the room and some questions around performance. So I just thought you could speak to that one for us if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, well, in my sporting career, I sort of played senior footy from age 16 through to 31, and that was the year out of all my years that was the best I played. And I know hindsight and looking back and all the reasons why, when you reflect, you get a good understanding of why that happened. So it's not just a simple answer. Like it's not like, geez, yeah, the sun was shining on me that year and away we went. It was the fact that like I talk about my upbringing and my love of footy. I'd kick the footy from the time I could walk till that 95 grand final. I'd smashed it, and I would have kicked the footy as many other kids going around in the country, I reckon. And so there's all that time and that love. They talked about me that the old man had a Collingwood jumper and he was a Collingwood supporter, and he cut the sleeves down on it and cut the bottom off it. It was one he used to play in, and it became my footy jumper when I was a little kid. And whenever they washed it, they used to put it on the clothesline, and I'd sit under it until it dried so I could put it back on. Right. So you're talking about a kid that was, his dad instilled a lot of love in footy. So for me, it was I just played it. So before school, recess, lunchtime, after school, every night, every opportunity I get, I played it. So that, I guess that's the first thing, is that I'd done it for a long time, but I'd probably never been the absolute best I could be until all things worked up to this point. So I reckon it's good that I've talked about sort of 91 and that period of time, because that was a real part of it. Like throughout that period of time, I got home one night and I got the yellow pages out in the top, big yellow pages it was, and clicked through and got to the psychologist section. I said, whichever one here is the one that jumps off the page is me, and the one I'm going to see. I got to this stage where I was just becoming frustrated with a bit of that negative mindset I talked about. I've always been a bit of a people pleaser, and you know, I was just beating myself up too much. And I went and saw this lady, and she really, really helped me. I only saw her for 3 sessions, but she changed a lot of my self-talk. She got me to keep a diary on the things that I was saying to myself and gave me an article to read about it. And so I kept this diary, and I couldn't believe how negative I probably was about myself and beat myself up about things that now I think back and go, what a waste of time. But that's where I was at the time. Got me to write some letters to all the key people in my life, and tell them how much I loved them and why I loved them and why I was grateful for my relationships with them. And what that did was, there was a couple that I wrote that I never sent because they were pretty full on, and I didn't want that person to feel bad about some of the things. But having write them was quite cathartic. But I sent a lot of them off, and I got these letters back telling me things that were just, you know, made me cry and made me feel pretty good about myself. But what it did was, the shift in that period of time was I started to look at what was coming at me, and I think I'd closed myself off to some of that. So as soon as I started to see these good things coming at me from everywhere, and really acknowledge them and take them on and not just push them away and be hard on myself, I started to grow some confidence. And I think that was the catalyst for me being able to be me completely around the end of '94. And so then the other thing that couples with that is John Dimmer comes in. He's a new coach, but he gets the players to vote for the captain. Now, with where I'd come from, there was no way I thought I was getting too many votes, and I got voted the captain. So it was like this endorsement from my mates that we want you to lead us. So that was when I was hook, line and sinker. So that was the end of '94 on a camp. I counted the votes up, read them out, and said, "Harrow, you're the captain. We want you to be the captain." And it was like, right, this is responsibility. This is me. So everything I did from there on was about us winning, and it was bigger than me. It became much bigger than who I was. It became our footy club winning a premiership, and so I was away. JD was a great coach, so he got me to take training. He got me to pick the team. He did all these things that set me up for success and buy-in, which I've tried to make sure that I've added to my coaching over. But it was a new paradigm for me. It was a new way of looking, the way you coached and empowered people. So, and then within '95, like, I used to swim on my way to training. So I'd stop off at the Whitford pool on the way, and I'd swim a kilometre. And so when I got to training at 4:30, there was 3 or 4 of us that were school teachers, and we'd kick the footy for 45 minutes before training started in our groups of 3, because that was JD's big drill and we loved it. Then we'd train, and then I was the last one off the track doing goal kicking with the forwards. And it became this ritual. And then I'd do my run on the other night. I added a massage once a week to it. I just had this routine. Friday nights were my pasta night, and I used to have a few different blokes around most Friday nights, sit and watch the footy and eat pasta. But it was this whole weekly routine that allowed me to play my best footy. I took a journal. I wrote a journal during that year, and I cut out all the clippings in the paper, gave myself a rating out of 10, gave the team a rating out of 10, put in all my statistics. And so each week, and I wouldn't miss myself when I wasn't, as good as I should have been, and I'd apologise to the boys and whatever, but I didn't miss myself because I was growing in confidence. When I played well, I'd go, I was good today. And I was able to accept that, not be as, I guess, closed off to be. It was okay that I played well today, and it's okay that I believe I played okay. I'm not being a cop. I'm actually, actually went all right today. And that wasn't being a big head, which I would have struggled with in the past. So it sort of all came together, mate. It was all those things that, and then I had the support of my mates.
Yeah, that environment bit that you kind of alluded to a bit before.
Yeah, they joined in with me and helped me.
Yeah.
They all played their own part.
Yeah. Yeah, far out. A lot in there. Guys, I'm just going to throw to you in the chat box. Can you write down one thing? It might be a word or a quick sentence that landed with you just then. A bit that was like, yeah, that sounds like something maybe I could try, or haven't heard of that before, or have heard of that before and it worked for me. Just curious to hear what's kind of landing. Melody says routine. Yeah, such a powerful one, because that's kind of the end game of mindset, is how it's affecting your actions and behaviours there.
I got a question, Josh, if that's all right.
Yeah. Please, Isaac, fire when ready.
Darren, you talk a lot about how that period in your life, your peak performance, particularly in sport, and what your passion was. Did you find there was a correlation between what was happening externally as well? Did you have really good balance in the rest of the aspects of your life day to day also?
Yeah, it's a great question, Isaac, because I'd been through, when I was having that rough period, I'd had a little bit of a falling out with my wife now, and I moved out for a couple of weeks and moved back in and went through that whole learning about myself, and realised that I had to change a few of those behaviours in my relationship and at home as well. And so what we ended up doing was we ended up buying our first property. We got engaged. We got married at the start of '96. Like, everything sort of came together. It was, like if Happy Gilmore, you can find your happy place. I was in it, mate. To be honest, I was right in amongst it. So it's a really great question. It was like everything came together, but it's amazing, I think, how that can happen when you start to feel good about yourself and have some belief and start behaving the way you want. So, yeah, there's no doubt that we were having a real happy time. We had a lot of friends too that were similar, all in relationships and getting close to getting married at the footy club, and we had a tight-knit group of people that we socialised with as well, and I was working and teaching and happy doing that. And so, yeah, there was definitely good balance, mate.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, that's to all everyone who's like coaching sport or leading others at the moment. It's a particularly important question to take note of, because I know I've kind of watched as a coach this last 18 months with Harrow how dialed in, or how helpful it is to be dialed into the life of a player around their sport. Like, if you're aware of what's happening in their life and you're aware of how that can affect their mindset with their footy, it means you can notice, as Harry was alluding to before, notice when they're a little bit later than usual, when they're not speaking up in meetings, like when they're a little bit off, and then reach out and help them. It applies to you and it applies to others too. Thanks for that, Isaac. So some really cool answers here. So Laura said one thing that landed with her was building the environment around you so that you stack the deck in your favour. Love that. Empowering your team. Yeah, that two-way relationship that Harry was talking about, where they believe in him and then he's able to help them. Supportive friends from Tess. Dan Morgo just said, Harrow just brought up the lifestyle and culture we had in Shep. Morgo played for a ripper footy club over east, really successful, and sounds like that was pretty similar to what Harrow had at West Perth that year. Emily said positive self-talk, self-confidence, healthy to give yourself accolades. That's powerful, hey? It's okay to give yourself a pat on the back. I think it comes when you're more comfortable with who you are. I've run out. This is my notes, guys. I've bloody run out of room already, so I'm just going to read a few of mine. So a few things for me, Harrow, that I heard then, and just add them to the list if you missed them, guys. That when you really want to set yourself up for like a peak performance mindset, I heard that Harrow's that obsession, like that kicking footies and just like daily interest and curiosity in what it is that you're trying to get better at is important. I think it's really cool, especially back then, Harrow, that you went to see a psychologist a few times and it helped change your self-talk. I reckon that's something really worth thinking about. If you notice you're a bit negative in your mindset, that can be a real circuit breaker, I think. The letters to people that you care about, sharing what you're grateful for, among other things, that's profound. I hadn't heard you speak about that before. And then you get back all the things that they think about you, and then that starts to reinforce a more positive mindset in yourself. Getting involved in something that's bigger than you, and connecting that to purpose. feeling empowered by leaders and others around you sounds like an important bit of it as well. The ritual part, what are your daily rituals and how are they either reinforcing or pulling apart a healthy mindset, and that journal too. It's like topping and tailing either your day or your week so that you can break your month and year up into chapters. So it's a bit more of a coherent story for you. I think that helps with your self-accountability in terms of your mindset too. So hopefully a bit of that made it onto your list. I'll have to just turn my page over here. We got one more from JH. Hey, mate. Welcome along. Being able to be confident in your performance, too often it can be confused for arrogance. Yeah, I think that's important. Great. All right.
Yeah, no, I think that comment's really important. I was happy with that. I think that was something that I don't think I've ever really done, and I think that's something that I'd like to take on, because I think too often I think there's also that like idea of maybe being afraid. You want to tell that to people, so yeah, you don't want to go and tell your teammates that, but I feel maybe there should be a supportive culture where that could be facilitated. I don't know.
Big time.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're onto
It's not my brand, but I do like it.
Yeah, good. Good. Thanks, mate. Yeah, if you've got positive people around you building you up, you can build each other up, and that affects your confidence and the story that you tell yourself, for sure. Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
All righty, next question. We've got to keep moving. So number 3 is, what advice or help, Harrow, would you give someone who has the potential to perform? So they've got the talent or the tools, but have struggled with consistency and work ethic in the past. They've struggled to stick at their goals. This is a pretty common one in a lot of people's submissions. So they've got the talent or the tools to perform. They've got what they need, but they haven't been able to be consistent or find the work ethic needed to stick at their goals.
Yeah, it's one of the great challenges of coaches and leaders, I reckon, that you can see someone who, could be the best at what they're, if they wanted to be, could be the best in their field, or could really help your team go from mediocre to winning. And there's a lot of, this is the one as a coach where you can see it, but you don't always get it backed up by behaviour or performance. And so I think one of the key things as a coach or a leader for this is to really challenge the why. So I think if it's not a real passion, if you're not really bought into it, you don't have to do it. Like, I find that there's been young people that I've coached at different times that Dad's been a great player, and so he's made me kick the footy and he's taken me to football. I don't really want to play it. I have talent, but I'd prefer to be playing the guitar or traveling the world or whatever. And I think that's okay. Like, it's okay. But I think when you buy in and you really love doing something, that's when your talent, that's when you'll train harder and you'll buy into it. And so I reckon that's one of the first thing is the buy-in, and I think that's a choice. So, and then you've got the different personalities. So, we know them at our footy club, and this whole situation we've been going through, we've learnt a lot about our player group. So folks that don't want to sit in a meeting, don't care too much, just want to get out and have a run around and kick the footy, and they're highly talented. How do you actually come up with a program or a way of allowing them just to do that, but still fit into a team structure? So, like a couple of the blokes we coach that are just unbelievable talents, but there's more to them, and so they play it for fun. And sometimes that's enough. If that's good enough and your team accepts that, that's actually good enough. Or you might lose them if there's too much pressure on to push them to another level. We have a young player who is sick of his whole life having people go, "You could be so good if you just put in." And when you dig deeper and deeper and you get into his family history, he's just there's so much to unpack for him to be able to get there that is probably out of my skill set. You get him the support and the help he needs, and we're starting to see an improvement there and a buy-in and a confidence that comes with it. Advice for talent. This is a and the other thing that might come from a talent point of view is probably either knowledge or confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it links back to that first question. I might have had the talent, but with what I was going through at the time, didn't allow me for that to be at its absolute best, and that had to do with the knowledge of myself and what made me tick, but also some confidence, and belief that, geez, I can actually do this. And some people with talent can also be pretty hard on themselves. How do you get them to start their self-talk journey of it's okay to be the best I can be? It's not an easy one to answer. I think you'd be looking at that from all different angles again to try and influence those blokes, because at the end of the day, it's about doing the work and buying into it and working hard, and you get the best result. But you got to want to do that.
Big time, yeah. So a few things I heard in there, that you don't have to do it. That's a pretty interesting angle, or interesting kind of internal voice to have with yourself. Obviously, the example you gave then is helping other people as a coach, but everything I'm listening to from you, I'm trying to flip back to how do I talk to me, and how does everyone in the room talk to themselves. And I think it's a really powerful one, because like if you're finding you're just not able to get up and do the 5K run, and you're getting down on yourself and thinking that you haven't got enough willpower or discipline, or it's affecting how you see yourself, the problem might not be you. The problem might be that you've kind of picked the wrong thing to commit to. Maybe it's a swim. Maybe you're in the wrong lane. Like maybe you should be riding instead and doing something that you enjoy a bit more. And then when you start to talk about how different people are different, maybe the problem isn't, again, with the way you're thinking about it. Maybe you just need to link up with one person, because you have more fun when you're around others and training with others as well. And so it's like an environment thing. That starting with know yourself was such a good jumping off point, I think, because that's really relevant to that question there. Anything from you guys? Any follow up to got the tools and talent, but haven't had the consistency and the work ethic that you'd like to kind of dig under a little bit more? Oh yeah, Isaac's got the mic on straight away.
Oh. No, I was just going to raise, if anyone's been watching that Michael Jordan documentary, it's been really interesting to note that Dennis Rodman, who's probably sits outside of the spectrum in terms of what your stereotypical teammate is going to be, was given a lot of leeway and leash to go and be the person he was, because they knew on game day he turned up to play and he did his job of getting as many rebounds as possible. So they accepted him a little bit for who he was, so long as he delivered on court, which was interesting. But yeah,
like freedom to be yourself, and playing free. Yeah, nice. Anything else? How you going, Baden Street? That all makes sense to you? Yeah, good. Nice one. Okay. All right, this one I kind of threw in. It's a bit cheeky. I'm really keen to hear the answer to this next one, because this has been front of mind for me and a few other guys that I speak to regularly, you being one of them as well, Harry. So the question is, we and a few others are on a stoicism kick at the moment. How would you describe stoicism, and how have you found it helpful for your mindset, if at all?
How many hours we got?
You got about 5 minutes.
Right. So it's I guess the things that really resonated for me around stoicism when I got given it. So, good mate of mine went to America with some of the best leaders in the world, was locked away for 3 weeks, unbelievable opportunity, and they were given a book to read on stoicism, and he came back and gave it to me. Stillness is the Key by Ryan Halliday, and it was one of those books that I just didn't put down. It made a lot of sense. So the things for me that came out of it were that I really love the theme around controlling what you can control. Like, it just made so much sense. And so I've been on this journey of I've learned to meditate and been away with my wife and learned to do that, and what meditation meant to me. And so the big challenge that I had was, how do I just enjoy the moment I'm in? How can I be here? Because I know that's where I can, I guess that's where performance sits. If I'm thinking or worried about what's going to happen in the future, or I'm thinking about the negative things of the past, or the things that have, I'm not good at that, or those sort of things, that sort of mindset, how does that help me to perform this right now? It doesn't. It makes it harder to perform. So I like that whole concept of the only thing I can control is what I'm doing right here, and I get to decide that. I guess it was funny. I was doing my exercises today, quick story, and I'm at the bottom of the stairs and I'm doing my push-ups, and I go to run up the stairs, and this an elderly lady was walking down the stairs. Now, I reckon if I wasn't mindful, I would have just ran up the stairs and tried to squeeze past her, and up I went. And I just thought, I'm standing down here at the beach. There's the water. I'm just going to stand down here. I was probably a bit sore from my push-ups. I didn't want to do them quick enough. I don't know, maybe that was it. But this lady walked all the way down the stairs, and it took a couple of minutes, and down she came, and she said, "Thank you." And I, no worries. And then it jogged me. And for the next 10 lots of stairs I went up, I was thinking about, right, I ran into Hawley on the way, and I could have just waved to him and kept walking. I stopped and talked to him for 5 minutes and asked him how I was going. I stopped and a car was going past, and I just stopped and let the person go past. I waved and said hello to someone. The lady I bought the coffee off, I ended up having a chat and how's she going, and and walked away, and we both felt good, and it made me think about this. There's a kid's book, and it's about filling your bucket. And so if you do acts of kindness throughout a day, right, and you put your head on the pillow that night and your bucket's full. Now, you're not actually filling other people's buckets. When I let that lady come down, I'm not filling her bucket. I'm filling mine, if that makes sense. So I just had this whole, and I don't know how I ended up here at the moment, but with stoicism, but that's sort of what it means to me. Like it's being a good person. It's like doing the right thing, and it's okay to stuff it up, but that doesn't define you. You get to choose your next action. And so there's that part of it. Looking at things from all angles, equality. Like you've read a fair bit of it, but you've got the bloke who's the leader of the whole world, and he's a lot of his writings at the time are for him, for no one else to read, and he talks a lot about how well he treats people at all levels. Doesn't matter who they are. What makes me any different than anyone else? So this whole hierarchy's out of the way, and I just love that. Like I think of a footy club and what makes your number one player or the water boy any different. Why are they any different? What, because people admire this and pat them on the back? Like so that all links to stoicism. I think it links to like every room, every team, everywhere, school, classrooms. Everyone has a set of values, and for me, they're either words on a wall or you live them. And so the stoicism for me is this whole concept of it's not a rule book, but it is a way we live. It's a way of life. It's what we do. And I reckon that's when great teams are doing that and you're doing that, and it feels really good. So, yeah, that's sort of where I'm at with it, and I can talk about it for ages.
Yeah. It's a trap, isn't it?
All these different learnings to go with it, but when you read it, it's almost common sense, and you go, oh, geez, I did that, and you're almost a bit embarrassed about your behaviour. And then you go, yeah, but I shifted it to that. Yeah, that was good. And so it's like just a way of being a good person, I reckon.
Yeah, they have a pretty profound quote in there, I think, that differentiates Stoicism from other life philosophies, which is something like, let's stop arguing about what it means to be a good person and just be one. They're really action oriented in the way that they go about it. Guys, just in case you missed it, there's gold in there. So just with the filling up your bucket thing, that's really relevant. If you think about just the example Harry used earlier, where he goes into his run with just an awareness of like a kind of stay in the moment, aware of your immediate surroundings, notices the lady on the stairs, notices or has a chat to the lady when he's getting his coffee, has a chat to Hawley when he's going for his exercise, just present and aware of his immediate environment, versus if he wasn't and only focused on his run. If he only focuses on his run, he kind of gets home and ticks the box and he's grounded out and it's done for the day. But because he's aware of his immediate environment, he's got his run done and he's filled his bucket up a little bit and he feels good about himself. And he's probably a little bit more likely to go for his run next time if he feels a bit better about himself, versus whether, like, if he's just kind of gone out and got it done. Does that make sense to everyone? I reckon that's a pretty profound headspace to practice and kind of get yourself in when you're exercising. Just make sure you're smelling the roses when you do it, because you're more likely to go back. And then that links to the routine that we were talking about. You want to really set yourself up so that you're enjoying the challenges that you set for yourself. Last one before we open the floor. So this is one from Emily Gray. Just a real fantastic question, I think. So I'm going to share this one, and I'm interested to get your thoughts, Em, on just Harrow's take on this. It's got to do with, it's a bit of a peak performance one. I might have touched on it a little bit of it earlier, but Em said, in a sporting situation or a high stress situation, self-doubt, negative thought processes can often overpower our mind and affect our performance. I've definitely experienced that as a player playing like state league footy. We all know that letting negative thoughts infiltrate our mind isn't helpful. But how can we stop this from happening? Are there any good tips around changing mindset when put in a stressful situation?
Yeah, it's a really good. I had to think about this for a while, and then I thought about, again, because I've only got my own experiences, so I go, all right, for me, when was that going on, and what's the difference when it wasn't going on? So in my first 3 years of senior footy, so 1987, 88 and 89, I played in 3 winning premiership sides in a row. So I'm sort of 18, 19, 20, and I've won 3 premierships. But in one of those years, I won a best and fairest, and so I was performing quite well, but I never played well in big games. Well, I didn't think I did. So, we won those premierships, but I never felt like I was at my best in them, and it was almost like I got a bit overawed by the whole situation. So built it up. This is the biggest day of my life. This is so important, and how good it's going to be, and I've got to go. And I just built up this whole pressure scenario for me in those years. And so when I think about 1995, and again, it comes back to knowledge and putting yourself into training environments and positions where throughout a period of time, you're much more resilient, because over a period of time, you're aware and you'll build it, and you don't let it affect you the same. And it's a maturity thing. You look at some personalities that don't seem to care, go out, play well, and you just go, how do you do that? And it's probably personality, but they don't seem to worry as much. I knew myself well enough in 95 that I came 6th in the Sandover that year, but I didn't go to the Sandover medal count that night because I knew they were going to interview me. I knew that I'd be on the cameras. I knew I'd have to get dressed up. I knew it'd make me nervous. I didn't watch it. I stayed at home. I had a meal. I went to bed. I did what I'd normally do. They had a parade in the streets. They used to have a parade in the streets. I didn't go. I was the captain. My mates were on the television and they were having a great time and being interviewed and on a truck, and it was all looked like great fun. But that wasn't for me. I didn't go to. They have a carbine club where they get the 2 captains. I just sent an alternative, and it wasn't about. I guess, being arrogant, or it was me knowing myself, and my job that weekend was to play my best possible game for my football club to win, And if I got too overawed, I wasn't going to be able to play it, and I'd be thinking too much about the result. And so I had to just think about what I need to do in the week to get myself there. And so I don't know whether I'm going to answer your question exactly, but the more you learn about yourself, doing the journal, what worked, what didn't, puts you into a place of preparation. When you're in there performing and you've done it and you've practiced it and you know what works, you're more chance. It still mightn't go your way, but I reckon you're more resilient to whatever might happen, and able to perform in that moment when you're more confident and know you've done the work. Both on yourself, but also physically, mentally and physically. If you've done the work, you're less chance of it affecting you too much at your biggest moments.
Yeah, and if we had $1 for every time you said collectively to the player group or individually to a player, pitch yourself at your best, even in this last 18 months, so we'd be killing it. That's a really common catch cry, and for me, that as you're describing that, Ned, I'm picturing a bit of a list from a performance perspective. This is all the things that are around me and that I'm doing when I'm not performing, not playing well. So trying to write that list so you know that, so you can learn from like the 1991s of your life, and then here's what I've learned about myself in terms of my peak performance when I'm going really well, like 1995, and you just keep adding to that list as you get your life experience, and that I imagine will help you pitch yourself at your best because you're stacking the deck in a way that your experience has helped you to like learn about yourself.
As you're speaking, it jumps into my mind too. As you become more mature, you make things simpler. Like 95, I kept it really, really simple. Just my routine. It's what I did. I wasn't jumping out of the ordinary, and it was really simple. And when I coach now, and you would know it, it's a simple game plan. It's a simple way of thinking about it. And the simpler it is, you don't think as much when you're in the actual performance because you know what you need to do. If you're thinking about too many things in the actual performance of doing, I don't know whether you can do it as well as if these are the couple of things that I need to focus on.
Simplify. Yeah, cool. I was going to check in with Emily then, but she's just left the room. We were saying that she's out in Cookeran, and her internet's on like a pedal powered ADSL, so she might jump back in a second.
It might have been the
answer. It's a mic drop. Okay, guys, Harry, that's our 5. We're at 6:01. If you need to bounce out, I know some of us have got uni labs and all that kind of stuff. Happy to get going if you need to, but I just wanted to take 5 minutes, if that's okay with you, Harry, just to open the floor if anyone's got any follow-up questions at all. If anyone wants to chime in, there she is. She's back, Emily. If anyone wants to chime in with just a extra question to unpack anything, as we're going through this, I want you to start to think about your one takeaway. We're going to put that in the chat box at the end of this, your one thing. But just a bit of question time for Harry.
Hey, Josh, I've got one.
Yeah, fire away.
Harry, how do you view taking risks, making mistakes, and learning from them, and the self-talk around that? You know, do you see a trend with people who are willing to take risks and accept their mistakes and not dwell on them, but learn from them, probably having an edge on those who don't? What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think when you become a parent, and that job, how important that job is. It's interesting. I'm talking to the dad. But when you become a parent, how important it is that you've got to stuff up if you're going to learn. You know, and it is actually okay to do it. Now, if you dwell on it and hold on to it, which we have players, I've coached a lot of players that do that. And so, all they're doing is stop themselves doing the next piece of work. But again, it's probably a little bit more complicated than that. You have to delve into, the reasons why and look at it from different angles. But, you're absolutely right. I think the ones that can let it go pretty quickly, that have really great self-esteems and belief, are able to do that. And the ones that don't, you need to cultivate that if you can. And that gives them a chance to do that because, you know, like I'll use the example of in football, the ball's not round. So you don't know where it's going to bounce. That's not your fault. All you can control, again, is your effort. And so if you're trying to be the best you can be and having a real crack at it and willing to make mistakes then and take risks, you're a chance to be better. But if you don't do that, I don't think you ever get the chance to. Like, we got a quote on our door by Roosevelt, which fundamentally says the credit is reserved by the person who's in the arena, not the critic. And you would have seen the quote before. It's not the critic that counts. It's the person who's actually in the arena. And that's my belief. You know, the person that's having a go, he's the one or she's the one that should be patted on the back. And if they make mistakes, they're doing it greatly. They're having a go. Like, that's what it's about. Get in and have a crack. But yeah, you're spot on, mate. I think it's a good get that, you know, the ones that are at the best are able to let go pretty quickly.
Big time. I've just chucked it up on the screen. Can everyone see that? The quote from Roosevelt there. That being comfortable with mistakes and failure, that kind of has a bit of the growth mindset and fixed mindset model about it. Have you come across that in your travels, Harry?
What's that, mate?
The growth mindset versus fixed mindset. I think Carol Dweck wrote a book on it. And,
I'm not again, with a lot of those things that you read, you just sort of add them. You find more information you get, you add them to your kit bag, and if it really resonates with you grab hold of it and it supports what you think, and if it challenges some of those things. And yeah, there's no doubt that you know, the concept of being able to. I think you've got the way I'll explain that for me is that you've got the core of your beliefs, and they sort of stay pretty true. You know, and so if you've got a footy club, this is what we do within our club, but we will experiment around the outsides to make ourselves better, and we'll adapt as we need to, which will give us growth to improve. Whereas if we go, no, that's not the way we do it, we're always going to be stuck just there. But at the same time, the example around experimenting around the edges that's important is that you don't throw it out and start again and everyone's confused. Build it. This is what we believe in. This is our values. This is our way. But we'll experiment and try different things to improve it. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's around the edges is where the risk bit happens. Where you have a play and try new things. Yeah, gotcha. All right. Well, the two dads have had a chat. Has anyone else got any other questions in the room at all? Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, I had one.
Hey, Laura.
I think one thing I struggle with is I'm always overly eager with the team, obviously, everything, like wanting to hit it hard. And then you're in a setting where the team's quite new and a lot of the girls don't have those same ambitions or goals or the same like ideals of what they want to get out of the team. So you have a lot of girls who want to win a premiership, and you've got other girls who are just there to make friends or just for a little bit of exercise, and it's sometimes a bit hard to try and find that common goal that you can all work towards. And then everyone in the team kind of having that different mindset. And that's probably why I wrote down before that build environment around you. But sometimes you're going to get those people who just don't really want to engage all the time with, I suppose, everything you're doing. And just kind of like the strategies around that to try and get that mindset a little bit closer together and getting that common goal a little bit better with the team.
Yeah, there's a fair few elements to that, Laura. Like if your leadership group and your coach and your club, if they want to be the best they can be and it's about performance, and you create an environment that's performance based, there's going to be non-negotiables within that you have to commit to. And my experience would say, like, my end of my first year at Claremont, I didn't sack anyone or ask anyone to leave, but 32 players left because it became a bit too hard for them, and they were more individual based. But what we were left with was a group of people that were much closer to a common goal and common values and beliefs. And then 2019 was another step in that direction, and that's why we're pretty disappointed that the rug got pulled out of us in front of us this year. But we think we're going to bounce back from that better because everyone's bought in. So I guess it's just deciding what you want to stand for and what your goals are. And, you know, why I say it's multifaceted is you might need those people to make up a team. I don't know what your numbers are like, etc. So there's going to be different circumstances. But if you're in the place where you've got enough players, your club's bought in, your leadership's bought in, then you can make that an environment through your values, what you stand for, that people have to make a choice on whether they're in or they're out. And if they're in, that's bloody good fun.
Perfect. Thanks.
Laura's one of the leaders down at the mighty Cottesloe Hens. Hold up. Sorry, Laura, I'm just going to mute you there. And the Hens won a premiership a couple of years ago, but they've had a bit of movement in the people there, and they want to get back to that. It's an awesome team culture, but yeah, what I'm hearing from Laura is it's like what's the best way to aim everyone? And I think like what you said about being comfortable with people like leaving, you don't want to see people leave, but you want to make sure that everyone who is there has acted their way in and wants to be part of it the most and is bought in. So guys, last call, we've got time for one more question. I feel like a radio announcer.
You look like one.
Thanks, mate. I've got a head for radio.
Can I ask you a question?
Oh, yeah, go, Em. Yeah, we lost you before. Far away. Sammy, you can wait.
Yeah. Sorry, Sam. The reception at Cookeran keeps dropping in and out. Sorry about that. Going back to that high stress situation and mindset, thanks for answering that question. I think that was really good. And your opening line on saying when was it going on and what was the difference for when it wasn't going on in terms of your reaction to the high pressure situation and why you're acting differently in that situation compared to a training scenario, and trying to figure out your whys there is a really good place to start. So thanks for that.
Pleasure, mate.
One thing that keeps coming up when you're talking, we're a bit delayed. And so obviously one thing you mentioned was the tools to understanding how you work and that sort of thing. Are there any other tools that you would suggest in understanding what makes you tick and knowing yourself?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit hard to hear you, Emily. Sorry, mate. But I'm thinking that the question is around tools you have to help you to perform. So it's again, it comes back to me about knowing yourself. So, you know, meditation has become big for a lot of AFL players and sports people because it allows them to be in the moment, to the point where the Richmond Footy Club had all different cues on the ground and they used to meditate together, but to the point where one of the players used to push his toes into the ground, which would make him feel like he's where he's at again. So it'd bring him back to the place where he was and not his mind somewhere else, which I think, you know, whatever the cue is that brings you back to where you are, it might be a teammate or something that, you know, you might talk to each other, whatever the cue is that brings you back to where you are in the present is really important. I think getting feedback. So I think a feedback-rich environment is important as well. Like if at the Eagles when I was there, we had a professor and he set me up with a team. So I had 2 players, a coach and a staff member. And whenever I had to present, they would watch me and take notes on me and then I would go and seek them out and get feedback on what they saw and how I could improve, what they thought I could get better at. And so it became this feedback loop, which was really important for me as a young coach at the time. So they're probably a couple of things, and just trying to play with you. I don't think routine needs to be too massive that, if your best pair of undies aren't in the wash and you can't put them on that day, you're not going to perform well. But you have a routine that allows you to, get into the continuity of putting you into a great frame of mind when performance is on. So whatever those little things are that are important to you. And, I know meditation and mindfulness has become a big part of that.
We'll just give that 25 minutes to get out to Cookham, and then I'll get a nod from him.
I hope you heard that, Emily.
Yeah, she was in the room the whole time. There we go. So did you catch that, Em?
Yeah.
There we go. Got it. Well done. I'll send you the recording either way, so you can have another listen if you need to. Sam, you got another one for us real quick?
Yeah, mine's probably less of a question and more of a thanks, because I had a bit of an epiphany. And it's the first time voicing it out loud, so I might fumble over these words. I can't actually use a chat box, that's not working for us. So the epiphany or the realization was that when you're talking about journaling and learning about yourself and learning more about what makes you tick, was that for me it was like if you had an issue or a problem and someone gave you a book and said the answers are inside the book, and you've technically got the answers, but unless you actually studied the book, you don't actually learn them. So for me, it's like the big takeaway for me was journaling. So I tend to ruminate over stuff, and I think that just by default gets you in a negative mindset, and it's hard to get out of it. So if I journal, I learn more about myself, and probably the answers are inside. I think for a lot of people, the answers to their problems are inside, but I don't tend to study them. So anyway, that was it. Just wanted to share that and say thanks, because I had that epiphany, and yeah, for me, the biggest takeaway was definitely journaling, so I can stop ruminating and start putting in my success columns and my failure columns and focusing more on the success one. So that's it. Thanks, Harry.
Good on you, mate. Yeah, I was reading about in Stoicism, one of the passages recently, I think I might have shared it with you, Josh, as well, was that getting into that routine of before you go to bed, capturing your daily events and what they meant to you, and the reason being it helps you sleep well. So one of the main reasons, like you go to bed and you get a great sleep because you've gone, but it also sets you up for the next day. So it's almost like these are the events, the lessons learned. Okay, head on the pillow, and then the next day, what's the next lot of lessons? So yeah, journaling. I've still got to get into the habit of it. I haven't quite got there yet. I've been trying to for a while, but I am in the habit of reading some daily meditations, which make me think all day. So I've just got to make sure I capture that and journal at some stage, find a way that works for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good guess.
It's like know thyself, such a big question and a big problem. And the thing about journaling is that your pattern recognition will be so much faster if you pen to paper every night or once a week, and that makes it a lot more tangible and gives you a lot more to work with. Thanks, Sammy. Appreciate that. Guys, hopefully the chat box working for you. Chat box is working for you. Can you chuck in? I'm really curious to hear what's landed and what your one thing from tonight is, what you're going to go away and try as an ideally daily or maybe like a weekly action. Can you jump in the chat box for me now and hook in your one thing? I'll do mine. I'm gonna do the letter thing. I think that that sending letters out of gratitude to all the important people of your life, that could be a pretty powerful catalyst for. I was just keen to give that a go. So that's going to be my one thing. Harry, I hadn't heard you open that up before, and that really hit me between the eyes. So I'm going to give that a go this next month. Being present and filling your bucket. Thanks, Courtney. Yeah, big time. I'm expecting 14 here, guys. So get on the chat box. I'm not letting you out of here until I get you one thing. If you prefer to take the mic, that's cool as well.
I've been a bit envious. I've sort of wanted to be in Daniel's room and having a VB with him. The old Victorian thing, like.
At any time you'd like to have a tea with me, mate. The very best.
And the can too, not a stubby, a can. I love it.
Oh, well, now that I'm on the mic, Harrow, I think just with me, what you were saying at the start really resonated with me with my old footy club at Shep United up the road from Wodonga. You know, I was writing stuff down that I was remembering back then, and it was exactly what we try to do as a culture, especially with amazing coaches that I met, such as like Gary Kiddo and that. Like each player trying to better themselves to like make sure that bloke they're on again in the weekend can't be beaten. You know, that whole like everyone looking out for each other, like that whole mental health picture as a club was massive. And just that kind of like rating of yourself and the team as a whole. And you know, and even the dinners on Thursday when you kind of just like having the team announcements and everyone's together having a good time. It's something that I've like really missed since looking at kind of area playing footy around like Australia now due to work. But and your answer to Laura's question really, I love that because sometimes you need a bit of a buy-in with especially like a sporting team. It's all good to have a good social balance and everyone having a good time and that, but having like a clear pathway to performing well as a team to boost each other up. And if you're left with a skeleton crew to get there, it's only going to benefit you and the club and the people around you in the long run. So that was really awesome to hear.
Thanks for that feedback, mate.
Thanks, Morgo. So Simone said, do the thing that works for you. Harry and I were talking about that today, how everyone's so individual with what sets them up for the most helpful mindset. Think it through and go for them and fill your bucket up. Nice one. Tess says, discipline towards what you've chosen to commit to. That's your word as law. It's worth thinking about. Laura, her takeaway was reflection through journal and meditation, reflection on the team, what went well with the team in a game, what's changed in team members' attitudes and actions. Is there a reason behind it that needs attention? Yeah, you're a gun at that already, Laura. Done it. That'd be interesting to see how that goes for you. What about you, Zoe?
My mic's not. The chat box isn't working. But one thing I took away was keeping it simple, and especially with your routines. One example for me last year was I quickly realised that if I put my footy uniform on, like my polo, too early, that would just bug me out, and I was a hot mess as soon as I arrived at the Oval. So before I left, I put my uniform on, and I was semi-okay by the time I arrived. So thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Zoe. I love you. Just knowing what feels right on game day.
I guess I'll chip in there as well. I think I sort of got out what Zoe took there in terms of routine tending to create habits somewhat. So typically my experience hasn't always necessarily been in a team environment when you've got support or people around you to do. It might have tended to be more of a individual aspect, whether it's at work or sport. But something I always struggled with was, whilst I probably had some success in certain areas of my life, I've tended to coast. And the biggest learnings I've ever had have come out of crisis situations where you're either at your lowest or you've really been pushed into a corner where you have to learn to move forward. So something for me is probably routine. I'm the guy that Josh, was talking about before, the guy that sets the alarm at 6 a.m. but can't be bothered getting up to go and have that run. Whereas if I did, I'd attain the goals that I wanted to set myself. So I've always found that it's not necessarily about sort of goal setting. Sometimes it's about just creating a routine, because then you get into it and you create a habit out of it, and something organically can start from that. So yeah, thanks for your time, Darren. Really appreciate it.
Very good, mate.
Also, whilst I've got you, look, Joshy Pullman's the cleanest guy that we know. Have you got any dirt to dish on him?
I can't do it to him.
Damn it. All right.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Hey, we're still recording. We're still recording, Izzy, so you can save that for after.
Yeah, no, Angel, mate. It's coming.
Right, we better wrap this up.
Darren himself, share that with me later.
Yeah, right. I'll give you Sam's number. Daz.
Yeah, I was just going to come in real quick with my one takeaway. I've been actually writing a lot of notes. For me, I was talking to JP about it actually today, and I find that sometimes I can be my own worst enemy with probably self-indulging and having a bit too much fun, and it gets in the way of my own goals at times. But I haven't looked at probably looking at what I do well when I am doing well, and that's the one thing that I took away from what you said, Darren. So you look at the times in your life you've been happiest with and you've been probably performing your best. I haven't actually really looked at what I was doing there as much. In comparison, I kind of focus on the negative and how I get in my own way. So I'll be doing that soon. And Josh and I will be enacting a little plan, and we'll see how that goes, I reckon.
Bring it on. I'm excited, Daz.
So, yeah, cool. Thanks for that, Darren. Thanks for tonight. I was wicked.
Thanks, Daz.
Pleasure, mate.
Thanks, mate. I think this is one of our last ones, Harrow. So Jack says, building a positive environment, this is his takeaway, that works for you. Let this manifest itself upon you and your teammates. Don't feel the pressure from others, and don't allow that to influence you in a way that has an impact on your environment. I feel that's a really important thing, to establish your guidelines and your terms. JH, well spoken as usual. There's a lot in there, man. Thanks for sharing that. JH is a leader out there for the Roosters, the men's team down there. So that's big. Yeah, it plays a big part in the culture and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I particularly took a lot out of the comments you had about your preparation up to the grand final, and how you had a lot of responsibilities being a leader of the club. However, you didn't let that take away from your preparation and your mindset and the way that you approached your outlook on I guess the game. And I think it's more like staying integral to what your environment was and the way that you did things, and you established your terms, and you sort of stuck to that. I thought that was I think that was a really interesting point. It's something that I didn't necessarily expect to hear, but I definitely see that it's important that people anyway, I thought that was really interesting.
Thanks, Jack. All right, guys, let's wrap it up. Harrow, thanks so much, mate, for your time and your extra time. We've gone over time. I think you anticipated that, and I was a bit too optimistic. Hope we haven't held you up from anything tonight, mate. Thanks so much for coming along and sharing your experience.
I enjoyed it, mate. Thanks. Good job, too. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah.
At some stage, JP might ask me to come along and have a beer with you. I'll have a VB can. I look forward to that.
Yeah, you Victorians, you like magnets, you are. All right, guys, I'm going to finish up the recording. You can get going if you want. And interested to hear over these next few days how you found it and get some feedback and go from there. I'll see you tomorrow night, Harrow.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Thank you.
See you, bud.